Unit School District 300 Board of Education.
Reconvene.
Reconvening. Mr. Fiorentino, would you please call the roll?
Stevens.
Here.
Scarpino.
Present.
Miller. McNicholas. Kopaz. Garcia.
Present.
And Fiorentino present.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board, members of the community, and staff. Thank you for being here this evening. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Chris Sainsbury, principal from Perry Elementary School, who is joined by her lovely students this evening to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, good evening, everybody. We are going to lead everyone in the pledge here in just a moment, but I'd like to take just a second to introduce to you our first Perry Choir. So this is our after-school choir club that we run on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mrs. Patty West, she is our music teacher at Perry Elementary School, and she works with a group of about 25 kids. And the students in front of you are part of that larger group. So I am going to recognize our kids who have taken time out of their after-school agendas to spend with Mrs. West, and they really sound great, and you'll hear from them in just one moment. We have Kimberly Hernandez, Mia Lagos, Sofia Rosales, Melanie Ruiz, David Quintanilla, Sofia Rosales, that was a double, Iris Garcia, Jaslyn Navarez Rizzo, Ariana Chavez, Island Ayala, Cornelia Brown, Mia Campos, and Marielle Castillo.
Parents, please feel free. You can roam about the room and take your pictures if you want to come up and get pictures. Just please don't block anybody else.
Thank you, Perry Choir. And community board members and staff, would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Great job singing. That was very special. Thank you.
I think from now on, we will make that a requirement that there be a little singing at each board meeting with the pledge. Maybe we could pass that on. That was cool.
Nice job.
Item 5.1, there are no changes to the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Ferrantino?
Florentino, aye. Scarpino.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Moving on to good news. Yesterday, D300 Parent University hosted a presentation on student discipline at the District 300 Central Office. The presentation was hosted by none other than Shelley Nackey, District 300's Assistant Superintendent for Education Services, and Dr. Basilio Salazar, District 300's Coordinator of Social Emotional Learning. Mrs. Nackey and Dr. Salazar have extensive knowledge in the area of student discipline. Together, they co-chair the District 300 Discipline Review Committee and offer guidance to administrators in high-profile student discipline cases. During the presentation, Mrs. Nackey and Dr. Salazar provided parents with information on a variety of important topics, including suspension, expulsion, criteria, interventions, support services for students, school reintegration plans, the District 300 Parent Guide Handbook, and progressive discipline. District 300 recorded this informative Parent University, and the video will be available in the very near future at d300.org Parent University.
In an effort to provide parents and students with as much planning time as possible, District 300 has announced summer school dates for 2019. District 300 will offer high school and middle school students 2 summer sessions. Session 1 is scheduled from June 3rd to June 20th and will meet on Mondays through Thursdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Session 2 is scheduled from July 8th to July 25th, again on Mondays through Thursdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Extended school year for students with IEP needs will be held June 3rd through June 28th, Monday through Friday. District 300 will release additional summer school information, including course offering details and registration instructions, in late January of 2019. In other news, author Marina Mullars visited Jacobs High School. Marina Mullars, author of the novel Welcome to Freedom Point and winner of the 2017 New American Fiction Prize, recently visited Jacobs High School to speak with students during the various lunch periods. Marina, who graduated from Northwestern University with a Master's of Fine Arts, currently works for Netflix. She spoke with Jacobs students interested in writing and communications. Marina talked with students about collegiate programs, the writing process, how to become published, and how her creative writing degree supported her career path. District 300 would like to thank Marina Mullars for visiting Jacobs High School and proving that a creative writing degree is worth something, and for meeting with our students.
District 300 would like to thank staff, students, and community members for a great Halloween season. In our schools, many staff members dressed in group costumes, including the Incredibles at Hampshire Elementary, 101 Dalmatians at Wright Elementary, and the characters of Mario Kart video game at Algonquin Middle School. In the District 300 Central Office, staff members participated in a pumpkin decorating contest. The district's Grants Management Department won the contest with their entry inspired by the film The Book of Life. Finally, District 300 hosted a 70th anniversary social media campaign inviting alumni, parents, staff, students, and community members to share photographs of students or staff from any generation wearing Halloween costumes. The district was thrilled to receive submissions dating back to the 1970s. Thank you to everyone who participated. Also, District 300 has launched a new Spanish language newscast intended to provide parents and guardians with important district and school information. The newscast is called Noticias de Distrito 300, and it features timely news stories delivered by 3 students enrolled in the dual language program at Liberty Elementary School. The first newscast featured news stories about elementary school report cards, the district's 70th anniversary campaign, and how community members can keep informed of District 300's updates with our Spanish language social media channels. The district will continue filming and distributing one newscast per month throughout the academic year. Community members can find the site on the District 300 website. District 300 would also like to thank Liberty Elementary School students Stephanie Alea, Emiliano Aboitas. This one's tough. What is it? Athrazi Areola for their great work on this project. Thank you very much. In other news, on November 8th, District 300 principals had a meeting in the central office, and Superintendent Hyde used the opportunity to celebrate each school's designation on the Illinois State Report Card. Using his best basketball announcer voice, Superintendent Hyde presented each principal in the style of the 1990s Chicago Bulls starting lineup introductions. As each principal was named, a graphic featuring their fictitious basketball card appeared on the surrounding television screens. Principals were then led into the hallway where central office staff greeted them with cheers and high fives. Board members Steve Fiorentino, Dr. Scarpino, and Joe Stevens were in attendance to join in the celebration. Principals then headed into the conference room where they enjoyed a celebratory breakfast provided by Aramark. The Board of Education would like to commend each District 300 principal for leading their school to an impressive Illinois State Report Card designation. Thank you for everything you do for our students, our schools, and our community.
That really was a lot of fun. And Fred's going to be filling in part-time as a Bulls announcer.
On November 12th, District 300 schools recognized Veterans Day by honoring veterans and their families. Each District 300 school hosted a series of unique events and activities to honor veterans. AMS students and staff wore red, white, and blue. Jeff Bruce, a veteran with experience in the Army and the Marines, spoke to the students about his experience in the military. Lake in the Hills Elementary School hosted a flag ceremony followed by a reception with local veterans. At Hampshire High School, local veterans visited classrooms to share their experiences with students. Veterans were then honored with a special luncheon in the school's media center. During a concert performance at Liberty Elementary, third grade students dedicated a special song to veterans and invited them on stage for recognition. In addition to school-based recognitions, District 300 commemorated Veterans Day by partnering with True Patriots Care to create a Flags of Honor display. True Patriots Care is an organization dedicated to recognizing and supporting those who served their communities as first responders and as members of the armed services. True Patriots Care volunteers placed dozens of flags on the lawn located outside the central office in recognition of our veterans. District 300 proudly supports all our veterans, including board member Dr. David Scarpino, and we thank them for their sacrifice and service to our country. At this time, I invite the community to watch a brief clip of Veterans Parade at Hampshire Elementary, where veterans walk down student-lined hallways on their way to the gym where they were honored during the school assembly on Friday.
offering.
You want to just cut it? We'll watch it maybe next time.
Those pictures speak volumes.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Mr. Hyde?
Sir, members of the board, members of the community, and staff, thank you again. At this time, I'd like to ask you to join me, unfortunately, in a moment of silence. Ms. Denise Zluzak, formerly Gominski, age 71, passed away on Friday, October 5th in Barrington with her loving family at her side. She was born on June 18, 1947 in Chicago, the daughter of Edward and Geraldine Gominski. Denise is survived by her husband Charles, children David and Michelle. She was preceded in death by her parents and her brother Edward, and services were held privately. We shared this information with staff as they are still accepting memorials made in her memory to the Alzheimer's Association. Denise worked for our school district for over 37 years in capacity as a school clerk or secretary, first starting in 1966 at Irving Crown High School, then transitioning to Lakewood School, to Gulfview Elementary School, and finished her career in 2014 as the secretary at Carpentersville Middle School. So once again, if you'll please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. This time I'd like to bring Mr. Jason Emerickson to the podium. We will co-present this evening. As you know, according to our previous timeline, tonight is the first opportunity for the board to hear the recommendation. As a note for our community and those in attendance this evening, this is simply a recommendation. The board will not vote this evening. The board will utilize the next 2 weeks to review our proposal, review the information, and ultimately direct me to bring forward new information and or successfully vote and approve the proposal before them at a subsequent board meeting. Mr. Emerickson.
Good evening. I'm here before you this evening to present to you the Hampshire Middle School and Dundee Middle School rezoning proposal. Tonight is the accumulation of 8 months of work that started back in March of this year, and tonight we'll be bringing forward a recommendation to the board. Why are we considering rezoning now? Between now and the year 2040, our demographer forecasts our 9 largest villages to add an additional 25,000 housing units. Those homes will translate into 78,000 more people being added to the population of these villages, moving from 127,000 current residents in 2010 to a projected 194,000 residents in 2040. District 300 has grown approximately 100 students each year. This year, we were up 147 students over our previous enrollment. Based on a review of Hampshire Middle School enrollment projections, we are projected to be near the maximum capacity by 2021. Back in August, I brought to the board 4 proposals to reduce the number of students attending Hampshire Middle School. Option 1 was rezoning Gilbert's elementary boundary, currently residing west of the current Dundee Middle School boundary and north of I-90 to feed into Dundee Middle School for middle school. Option 2 is rezone Gilbert's elementary boundary, currently residing west of the current Dundee Middle School boundary and south of I-90 to feed into Dundee Middle School for middle school. Option 3 is to rezone Gilbert's elementary boundary, currently residing west of the current Dundee Middle School boundary and east of the railroad track to feed into Dundee Middle School for middle school. And the 4th option is to rezone all of Gilbert's elementary boundary students to now feed into Dundee Middle School for middle school. There were a total of 6 meetings that were held within the community and staff. 3 of them were staff meetings. 3 of them are parent meetings. You can see on the slide the times that we provided for each meeting for them participants to provide us feedback based on the 4 options presented. The district utilized SurveyMonkey as a way to collect the feedback from the staff and community meetings. The survey asked 4 questions. It asked for an email address so that we could get back to the individual if we needed some additional clarification. They provided a ranking system to rank the options from 4 least preferred to 1 most preferred. An open dialog box that explained why they ranked the options the way they did. And finally, there's an open dialog box for any additional questions or feedback they wanted to provide to the boundary committee. As received by the results, there was 301 participants that responded to the survey, so we had a great turnout from that perspective. Option number 4 received the most votes with 177 number 1 votes, meaning they were the most preferred option for the residents. It also garnered 58% of the 301 respondents. The breakdown is, as you see it from there, north of 90 was the second highest, or north of Railroad was third, and then south of 90 garnered the least amount of respondents. So from that survey, we also had the top 5 reasons why the stakeholders selected the options that they did. Number 1 was it makes more sense to keep Gilbert's community together. 2, prefer that students attend the closest school. 3, selected the option that had the least impact to the community. 4, families wanted to allow their students to continue to attend Hampshire Middle School. 5, use one of the defined boundaries to level out both of the schools' enrollment. I'd like to note that all the responses were provided to the board in a PDF format, so all 301 responses were provided to them to review. In the open dialogue section, these are the 4 main questions that were asked in the open dialogue. How will this affect high school boundaries? How will this decision impact my child's social emotional well-being? Will transportation be provided for 7th and 8th grade students? Why doesn't the district build a new school? And at this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Superintendent Hyde to answer the questions. You want me to click, or you want to click?
You're welcome to click. I guess we'll figure out a signal. So how will this affect high school boundaries? At this time, the district does not anticipate any impact to the high school boundaries. Any potential impact to high school would involve families as we look forward to potential rezoning at high schools. At the present time, the group that would most likely be impacted are those residents behind Woodman's, and that involves a transition away from Hampshire High School to Jacobs. Those families, those residences do not fall within the boundaries of the Gilbert and DMS HMS change. So while there may be some minimal changes in the next year or so with high school boundaries, again, our commitment was to address middle schools first, then go to elementary school, and then come back to high school once we felt we had stabilized the feeder patterns. But again, the primary concern, I believe, in this community was, will my students be rezoned to go to the east side of the district or go to Dundee Crown? And that is not in consideration at this time. I'll never be in a position, I don't believe the board is ever in a position we can say definitively that would never happen. But again, there is absolutely nothing on the horizon that would indicate that that is a consideration at this time. The second question was, what about my child's social-emotional well-being, their friends, acquaintances? All of our schools provide supports for students who are in transitioning. My son, as you know, is a 6th grader this year in one of our middle schools, in particular at Dundee Middle School, and all of them are provided with transition assistance. These students, by and large, are transitioning as a cohort. So while the entire school population, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders may be moving together, the grades that would be impacted by any proposal are traveling as a comprehensive cohort. And so they would still have those friends that they came up through elementary school in their core group within their specific grade level. But all of our schools are prepared to provide additional social-emotional supports, and I think really importantly to provide opportunities for team building so that they can establish new relationships in a new setting with other friends. Next. will transportation be provided for 7th and 8th grade students? So this was a really good question. I was glad it was a question that was asked. We were able to do our due diligence and investigate transportation in anticipation of this question, actually. And so if the district were to grandfather in 7th and 8th grade students, meaning current 6th graders who become 7th graders next year, current 7th graders become 8th graders next year, if we were to grandfather those students in and allow them to remain at Hampshire Middle School, we would not have the means to provide transportation due to the limited number of buses and also additional costs that we would incur because we were essentially adding routes at that time. The district team did perform its analysis of the option to provide transportation to 8th grade students in order to complete their time at HMS because they've been there for 2 years, and that will be addressed in a subsequent slide. So our transportation analysis, Ms. Bordson worked very closely with Durham School Services. We provided a total list of students who are currently in 7th grade. I believe it was 114 or 112 total students. Durham was able to then identify their individual households, and using their routing software, they were able to identify, again, their actual geolocation, meaning where they reside, and their routing needs to make sure that we fell within the 45-minute tier limits that we have imposed. As you know, our school start times are staggered, and we cannot exceed that 45 minutes, otherwise students would be late. Durham did find that they would be able to accommodate those 8th grade students with no additional costs. However, adding 7th grade would result in an increase of 2 to 3 buses at about $55,000 apiece. And then again, that would be a reoccurring cost because those 7th graders would then become 8th graders in the subsequent year, and I believe the expectation would be there for them to be provided transportation as well. So why doesn't the district build a new school? 35 million reasons why we don't just build a new school. To date, we continue to focus on maximizing our current fill capacity. Each one of our schools has a prescribed number of available seats, and it does not make sense to go forward and ask for a referendum. I think that our state continues to go through a lot of economic change. We just went through a leadership change, or we're going through a leadership change. It'll be interesting to see with evidence-based funding if that continues to be solidified, and then it's a different conversation. Our growth in the future will put us in a position where we will have to explore the option of a potential new school. But again, as I shared here, an elementary school costs, I know my numbers have to be updated, a minimum of $35 million and takes up to 2 years to be built. So Ms. Harkin and I were talking about some of the timelines today. A K-8 building could cost us upwards of $65 million simply because their footprint becomes much larger with track and other needs that have to be incorporated. We do own land out to on the west side of the school district. The question then becomes, is that the most appropriate location for us? And we would have to do other tests and things in the future to determine whether or not it's actually land that can be built on. I know the board has gone through this previously where we have to do percolation tests and others to see if whether or not we have to bring in fill and what the cost would be. But again, we're not anticipating building a new school because of its projected cost and our focus through rezoning on maximizing our existing efficiencies first. Building a school has to be driven based off the fact that we just have no available space remaining, and that that we're actually limited in continuing to do expansion projects. As you know, we've expanded CMS, Gilbert's, and Gary D. Wright. And as you saw initially, what triggered rezoning was we already have schools in the red. We're already projecting for those schools to be at or above capacity in the very near future. So my recommendation at this time, based off community feedback, based off all the options, I am recommending option 4 to the school district and to the board. This option essentially transitions all of Gilbert's Elementary School zone students to feed into Dundee Middle School beginning with the 2019-2020 school year. We would allow current 6th and 7th grade students to remain at Hampshire Middle School for their final year in 1920 for those 8th graders. Students would be in grade 7 and grade 8 for 1920. My recommendation is also that we provide transportation only for those students affected by rezoning who would be in 8th grade for the next school year. Again, we would not have the means to add transportation for 7th graders at this time. So that is my recommendation. The board, again, does not vote tonight. If there are questions, the board I'm ready, and so are staff, to address those. The board will not address this topic again until the next board meeting in November. My justification, as you see, I covered most of these. The feedback from stakeholders, the option provides us the greatest flexibility for both schools. If you recall the numbers, it places both schools at approximately mid 80% capacity, which also allows us to anticipate and accept future growth in those communities. It also best aligns to our rezoning goals of neighborhood schools, the shortest bus routes, maximizing our efficiencies of building space utilization, and establishing truer feeder patterns. And again, transportation has done the analysis. There would be no analysis, and there would be no additional cost this time to provide transportation to students who would be 8th grade students in 1920. Also, in subsequent years, the district would then save approximately $165,000 per year, as we would be able to eliminate 3 tiers from our current routing system and costs. In addition, a piece of good news for the families that would be transported, because DMS is not a walking school, because of the limited, there are no sidewalks. We would actually at times expect for our transportation costs to somewhat go up, and our ridership to go up, and our transportation length to go up. I'm very pleased that Ms. Bordson has been able to work with transportation, and at this time we would not anticipate a bus route. I'm saying anticipate, because with construction this year, we anticipated a lot of things that didn't come true with bus routing. But I believe, Ms. Bordson, you're in the audience, so we are not anticipating anything over a 25-minute bus ride, correct, at this time? For those Gilbert students, correct. So we would have much shorter bus rides yes, ma'am, to DMS for those students involved.
Are there any comments, questions?
Yes.
Dr. Scarpino?
Yes. I currently serve on the District 300 Boundary Committee alongside my fellow board member, Mrs. Garcia, and I'm incredibly proud of the committee's commitment to a thorough and transparent process while reviewing boundary options. During committee meetings, our group reviewed important information, including school demographics, building capacities, transportation efficiencies, and academic programming. In my role, I have been involved in reviewing the boundary proposals that have been presented and allowed to provide my perspective as a current board member, a former superintendent, a former principal, and proud member of the District 300 community. In partnership with the committee, I have attended town hall meetings at Gilbert's Elementary School and Hampshire Middle School. During these meetings, the district offered those in attendance a transparent look into the committee's process. There were 4 potential attendance boundary options presented to the community, which included a question and answer session. During each town hall meeting, I carefully listened to the unique feedback from each parent to ensure all their concerns were appropriately captured and considered during our boundary process. Additionally, over 300 community members provided responses to a boundary survey. Each survey submission was carefully reviewed. Concerns were placed into categorized groups, allowing the committee to determine potential trends. I noted that 2 of the most pronounced parent concerns involved were transportation and the social emotional supports that would be available to help ease a transition for students. Both of these concerns, as well as many others, were reviewed and discussed at subsequent committee meetings. From my perspective, I am appreciative of the lengths District 300 has gone to be transparent about the committee's process, to answer parent questions, and to investigate solutions to community issues, all while maintaining a focus on ensuring the academic, social, and emotional success of each student. I would like to send my gratitude to all members of the Boundary Committee for their commitment to a thorough process, and I would like to thank every parent and guardian who took time out of their busy schedule to attend a town hall meeting. And I would especially like to acknowledge my fellow board member, Mrs. Garcia, for her essential contributions and invaluable insights to the Boundary Committee. Thank you.
I'd like to highlight the word essential.
You were.
You said essential.
You were.
And I am still not married.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Emerson.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Emerson. At this time, I'd like to bring Susan Harkin to the podium.
Can't wait.
I am starting to get a complex about this. Everybody picks on me. What was me? Anyway, hello, how are you today? Good evening, board, Superintendent Hyde, community members, staff. I'm here to do my favorite portion of what's really, really important to fund all the things that we do, and as part of the annual process of the levy, which is required under state code, I'm here tonight to present the tentative levy. As we always do, we outline the process on how we go through the adoption cycle for our levy. We did at the last finance meeting on November 5th, review the tentative levy with that group, and we're here tonight to present the tentative levy, and later on in the meeting we'll be asking you to vote on the tentative levy amount and approve and authorize us to place a legal ad for a public hearing to be held on December 13th. That will go in the newspaper on December 2nd, and we'll file with the levies. What I'd like to reiterate as part of the levy taxation process, tonight we're asking for what we would like to have authorized as part of our annual tax filing, but in April, everything is reviewed and computations are held related to the levy, related to the property tax extension limitation laws, because in the state of Illinois, we are underneath the tax cap, which means there are very stringent processes that make sure we don't ask for more money than what the law provides for. And then in May, the tax bills will go out. What I'd like to highlight in this slide is by the last day in Tuesday, we are to put in our ask for our tax request, but in the spring, the assessor will come through and they will finalize what our property value or our equalized assessed valuation or EAV really truly is. That factors in market conditions of the community as well as any new additional new property. That information is not known as of today. The county clerk is then responsible for setting the maximum allowable tax rate for the taxing bodies. It takes the previous year's amount that we extended plus any allowable increase, and then it also factors in the authorized bond and interest payment, and then it is factored overall based upon the final EAV. And then we then approve the final tax rate that goes out on the property tax bills. There are 5 overall factors that go into develop the tax rate. The prior year cap tax extension, the amount that we collected and were authorized to put on the tax bill. The consumer price index, which is the amount that we can increase the previous year's extension. Equalized assessed valuation, new property, and our bond and interest payments. For last year, our tax levy, our overall tax rate was $5.88, and our overall extension was $194 million and some change. Then as we factor in and look to develop this year's ask, we have to make assumptions because we don't have the property value. We don't have the what the market conditions are for the property. So we take the prior years, we make an assumption of what our new property might be, and we come up with what we think the new EAV with the market conditions would be. In this scenario that I'm presenting to you tonight as part of the overall ask, I'm assuming that the prior EAV is increasing by 0%. The only piece of number that's accurate up on there is the prior year EAV and the consumer price index. In this district, we always overestimate our request. We are in 4 counties. We never know what our new property amount is. And in order to make sure that we do not lose access to new property, we will overestimate our ask, but again, as we indicated earlier, the county clerk and the assessor's office will make sure that we never ask for more money than we truly are authorized and within what the consumer price index will allow. This year, the new property amount is overly estimated there. with the going concerns related to the Sears property. If that were to come back on the books as new property, if I did not ask and over ask for those dollar amounts, we would lose forever access to getting the amount of money that's owed to us from the Sears EDA. So this year is even a more unusual year because I want to make sure, and we'll probably be in this state for a little while till that settles out related to what the long-term future of that Sears property would be. So we'll probably be in this state for a while. I will show you now what the numbers look like should that be the case. So overall, if all those assumptions on the previous page came through, we showed you that the $5.88 was the 2017 tax rate, and our tax rate would go to $7.04. What I'd like to point out is looking at the operations and maintenance tax rate that's part of the ask, we can only, as part of our overall process with the property tax extension limitation law, the most we can get for our operations and maintenance 75 cents or 75%. This is 83.29. Immediately when they would go through the property tax extension limitation law, they would knock that amount down and would not let us take our amount up to that. So there's already some unrealistic amounts that are listed in this. But again, if the new property were to come through, I can't lose the $13 million that's sitting out there waiting to come back on the tax rolls from Sears. But we also, as part of tonight, will go through what we really believe realistically would be our projected factors and what our projected tax rate would be. In this scenario, we're expecting about $50 million in new property. Last year, we were close to $62 million. $50 million, based upon the current information that's come out of the various counties, is very accurate. We're expecting that the prices of the housing will go up about 5%, and again, the consumer price index and the prior year EAV are already known numbers as part of our calculation. In this scenario, we would expect our tax rate to go down. We would expect that we'd go from $5.88 down to $5.68. Overall, the amount that we would collect would be about 2.86 higher than the previous year, and while the tax in the consumer price index was 2.1. Part of the increase of the 2.86 relates to the fact that new property is a portion of that. So not all of that goes to the local taxpayer. One thing that I'd like to highlight is we continue to trend down in our overall tax rate. Our highest tax rate was in 2014 at $6.72, and our tax rate has gone down $1.04 in the last 4 years. So what we think is important is, what does this mean to the average taxpayer? Assuming a average house price of $200,000, dividing it by 3, which gets you to an approximate assessed valuation for the house. For 2017, the District 300 portion of the property tax bill was $3,922. If that homeowner's price and house value goes up by 5%, their tax bill would go up by about $55 to $3,976, or 1.39%. If that person's property value doesn't change at all, and they have the tax rate of $5.68, they would see a $135 decrease on their tax bill and a 3.39% decrease. What I'd like to point out in this is, earlier in the slides I indicated who were the various parties responsible for how the tax rates get calculated. It is very important for the homeowner or the property tax owner to make sure that when they receive their sheet on what their property value is worth, that if that seems to be overstated, there is a process on the assessor's website that tells you how to challenge your property value, and that's certainly an important part, because your property value is what determines the portion that you pay of District 300 taxes, and that is the place that you need to make sure that is fairly represented on your tax bill. That generally happens in late December, early springtime, and you have to be on notice for those pieces of paper that come through to your home. This then represents, for 2017, the tax rates as we compare ourselves to Kane and McHenry County school districts. We are the red bar there. We are the fifth from the bottom. Our tax rate of the 588's there. for McHenry County school districts, they do not have unit districts. They have elementary and high school districts. So some of those are blended tax rates. And again, I'm always proud to indicate that we have one of the lowest tax rates in the area, and part of that's because we are a unit school district. One highlight slide that we do at this time of the year as well too is that there are 25 TIF districts and 1 EDA in District 300. Nearly 17 million of District 300 property tax dollars are diverted to our local municipalities underneath the allowance of the TIFs and the EDAs. And there's a significant amount of money that we have that is being extended on behalf of the school district that's going to the municipalities. So that's the end of my presentation. Again, later on in the meeting, we'll ask you to vote on the tentative levy. You are not voting on the levy, though, formally until the December 13th board.
You're saying vote on tentative levy. That is not on our agenda as a vote. It's only on there for information.
And we will be voting on this at the December 28th meeting.
So are you okay with that, or we can vote on it if we have to?
No.
No.
We'll vote on it for the December 28th.
Okay.
There's only 4 of us you got to commit.
Yeah, no, it's fine. If it didn't get to the other piece, I would rather just not amend the agenda for that piece
Okay.
of all that. So it will be roll call. We have time. You will then authorize us at the November 28th. Generally don't have a second board meeting in November, so actually this works out fine this time.
Okay.
So thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
Mr. Hyde, do you have anything else?
No, sir. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, we have no public participation. Is there a legislative update?
There is not.
Okay, on discussion items, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. Somebody please
Time it.
let out a yell if we want to discuss something. Board meeting minutes, permission to disclose or to destroy closed session minutes, disposal items, donations, treasurer's report, custodial supplies, custodial equipment contract pricing bid, employee benefit contracts, budget calendar, designee resolution, tentative levy, K-5 social studies textbook materials adoption, freedom of information request, and could I have a motion, please, for approval of item 11, the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Aye.
Scarpino,
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Stevens.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
I have a resolution I have to read. It is a motion to expel student number 1 for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year and the entire 2019 and 20 school year for violation of Board Policy 7.190, specifically using any form of type of aggressive behavior that causes or is likely to cause physical or psychological harm to a staff member and create a harmful disruption of the educational environment. Using or possessing, distributing, purchasing, or selling any illegal drug, controlled substance, or cannabis. Violation of an existing student disciplinary warning. This motion is to include the Board of Education agreement to hold the expulsion in abeyance, for the second semester of 2019-2020 school year, in the event that the student can provide proof of the successful continuation or completion of a treatment program through an accredited drug and alcohol counseling facility. The student must abide by all participation requirements prescribed by the treatment program, or the student will serve out the entire expulsion term. If the expulsion is held in abeyance, the student will be administratively placed accordingly. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of Mr. Fiorentino? I'm sorry, would you call the roll, Mr. Fiorentino?
Garcia,
Aye.
Scarpino,
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. And Mr. Stevens.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Under board discussion, the Board Finance Committee, you have pretty much heard what went on in that meeting with the tax levy, and let me tell you that tax levy and the budget has had more discussion than I think ever had before. And Mrs. Harkin does a really nice job of supporting the data that's within there.
I'd just like to give you grief, Susan. I'm so sorry.
Mr. Ferrantino or Dr. Scarpino, any comments on the construction of facilities? Board Boundary Committee, any further discussion? Nope. Any discussion for the good of the order? Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned.
Yep, 11. I mean, not that I watch the clock or anything, but it is right in front of my seat. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
We got it.
Being here. Isn't that exciting? Love being here.
It's cold.